Hello and welcome. My name is Angie Holden. I'm the blogger behind The Country Chic Cottage. Today we're going to use up those scraps, both vinyl and HTV, and make some really cute projects. So I'm going to show you quite a few methods for using scraps, some for tumblers, and including a really cool hack for those of you that have an iPad or iPhone for locating your designs on the scraps. Then we'll switch over to HTV, and I'll show you a cool method for making striped HTV here to use up all those scrap pieces of HTV that you might have lying around. Now I have free files for you to make these. So I have a link below. You'll sign up for my email address. You'll get the files to make all 4 of the tumblers, as well as 4 different shirts if you would like. So it's basically like a build your own type file where there's the words as well as several different icons, and you can use them to make a wrap, which I'm going to show you, or you can use the words themselves on a shirt, which is what I've done here. So either way, however you do it, grab those free files, start creating. So first, let's take a look at the supplies we'll need to make our tumbler. You will need a tumbler of any kind, some scrap pieces of adhesive vinyl. Permanent vinyl is best for tumblers. Then you'll need some transfer tape. I'm even using a piece of scrap transfer tape, and your light grip mat. Now let's take a look in Cricut Design Space at the design we're using and how to use it. These are how the files will look once you upload them to Cricut Design Space. If you don't know how to upload a file into Cricut Design Space, we'll just click Upload, Upload Image, and then find the image on your computer. Then you should get this screen. You do want to upload the SVG file and not the other file types, as it will be easier on you. It might look like an HTML file on your computer. Then just click Upload. Pick the design once you get to this screen and click Add to Canvas. Then once you get these files into here, you will want to ungroup them. And the first thing we'll want to do is remove this Create Your Own Tumbler wrap. Then the next thing we'll want to do is resize these. So the size you want is totally going to depend on the size of tumbler you have. So for this one, I want to resize both of these text objects together and resize it to something I think will fit my cup as well as fit my scrap piece. You do want to make sure it fits on whatever scraps you're using. Then you can do the same thing to all of these small pieces, and you can also click duplicate on these, making more than one copy, and make a variety of sizes to put on your cup. So make small ones, large ones, and you can make as many or as few of these as you would like. And let's say that I don't want the yarn ball on my cup. I would just click delete to remove that, and that way I would not have that on the cup itself. So I'm just going to make several different copies of these, and then we'll take a look at making the tumbler itself. So I did the same thing to all of my tumbler wraps. Now they're not necessarily a wrap, so I'm going to cut these out of various scraps, and I'm going to cut them all out of various sizes, and I'm going to place them randomly on the cup. But I did sort of lay them out in Design Space so I could make sure I had enough that I felt like for the cup to be full. So you can cut as many or as few of each of these elements as you would like, and make them whatever size you would like. Now that I have all of my elements laid out, I do want to make them all the same color because I'm going to cut them out of scraps and sort of lay them out on the mat to fit the scraps I have. So I'm going to click Color Sync, and I'm going to drag these all to where they are into one color. So I'm just picking each of the colors, dragging it up into that top color so they all turn that teal blue. And now that I have everything the same color, I'm going to click Make It. So now we're going to move these around to fit on various scraps. So let's take a look at the scraps we have on the mat and then move them around. So I'm going to show you how to move them around if you have Cricut Design Space for a computer, but I'm also going to show you a trick if you have either an iPhone or an iPad that you can use to more easily place these scraps. However, you can do this project whether or not you have that iPhone or iPad. So let's first look at how to do it on a computer. So I'm just adding my scrap pieces randomly to the mat, and then you will move the objects around in Cricut Design Space to where these are on the mat itself. That way it will cut them in the correct location. You can use as many colors as you would like and as many pieces as you would like on each mat. So I'm just going to kind of play around with the scraps I have and move them around until this mat is full. I can just use the grid lines on this mat to line up with the grid lines in Design Space and get my pieces located correctly. So once I have my scraps placed on my mat, I'll just move my objects around, and I can even rotate the objects. So I just want to place these wherever on my mat that my scraps are located, And remember, I want to cut these out of a variety of colors. So I wouldn't want to put all the paintbrushes, for example, onto one scrap color. I would want to vary that up a little bit and put a variety of things on the single scrap color, and then just continue to do this. And I can rotate them however I want so that they all fit on a single scrap piece. And I can also put this on 2 pages, but I could go to this second page and I can click Move Object and I can move it to my first page. So say I wanted this sewing machine out of this top portion, I could add it to there as well. So you can just keep playing with the scraps and the location and get everything where it utilizes the scraps as much as possible and get as many pieces cut out of each scrap piece. So I'm going to go ahead and move everything around on the mat according to where everything is placed on my actual mat, and then we will cut our pieces. This is the way my mat looks once I've arranged everything. Now I do have some things on page 2 of this, but I'm going to wait for a lot of those elements until the iPad iPhone version of this tutorial, but you can cut all of these with your computer if you would like. You could cut them on 2 pages or just eliminate some of them, whichever makes sense for your tumblers. And now that we have them where we want them, we can just click Continue. Then once your machine is connected, you can just pick vinyl as your material. So if you're using the Explorer 2 like I am, you can pick that on your machine as well, but you can also pick it from this list. Now, if you are using a variety of materials, because we are using scraps, you could have a few issues, but I would probably pick something that would be the thickest vinyl you're using, and it might cut a little deep on the other ones. Now I'm using all premium vinyl. I think that setting will work for all of these variations, so I'm just gonna pick it. I'm gonna load my fine point blade and cut my material. I have my fine point blade in clamp B, and I'm ready to load my mat. You do wanna make sure your mat is in the same orientation as it was when you were moving the objects around. So to make sure that the cuts are all in the correct location. Then we'll just load our mat and press the go button to cut. Then you want to weed your entire design. That includes everything around the outside, as well as things like the centers of any letters. I like to leave my vinyl pieces on the mat to weed them, but you can take them off if you would like. So I'll just continue weeding all of my pieces. In the meantime, let's take a look at that iPad and iPhone hack that I talked about. I have the design pulled up on my iPad and the mat pulled up that I want to cut for the second cut. Once you pull the mat up, you'll see a camera in the corner and it says SnapMat. You just click that. Then you will take a picture of the mat itself. I often have to lay the mat in the floor to get this picture. So to get it far enough away, I often lay the mat in the floor and then hover the iPad over the mat, following the guidelines, and it will take a picture of the mat for you. Once you get to this location, you just click Use. Now you'll see your objects, and you can just pull and drag each of the objects onto the scrap pieces. So I'll just sit here and arrange the objects how I want them on the mat, and then we can cut our design. Then you just load your mat and cut your material just as before. And here are those pieces completely weeded, and we're ready to put them on our tumbler. So let's take a look at that process. Once you've weeded all of your pieces, it's time to assemble them onto your tumbler. So I use the same piece of transfer tape for the entire project. I find that one lasts the entire time. So you want to start with the top words. So it is a layered design in the center with words on the top of one another. So I start with the top and put it onto my transfer tape and burnish it down really well. Then you just peel the backing paper away, leaving the vinyl on the transfer tape. Then you just want to line that up onto your bottom layer. Once it's lined up, we'll just press it down and again burnish from the front and the back. Then once again, we'll just peel that backing paper away from the vinyl. And now we're ready to put the first design on our cup. So this first design will start in the center. Now you could actually place this anywhere you wanted to. I like it in the center. Press it down well and remove the transfer tape. Now that that design is on our cup, we'll start adding designs around the outside edge using the same procedure as before. And I'm just going to place them randomly all around the cup. Here is the completed cup after I put all the designs all the way around the outside. Remember, you can mix and match these designs to create your own custom tumbler wrap, all with scraps and your Cricut machine. Here's a look at the rest of the tumblers that I made. So the first one is Artist Life with a variety of art supplies on it. The second is the Craft Squad that you saw me make. The third is So Creative with sewing machines, thread, and needles. And the last one is Maker of Things, and I put a Cricut machine on it, weeding tools, various rolls of vinyl around the outside. Again, you can drop down below, get the files for these, make as many tumblers as you want. So now that we've made our tumbler, it's time to get busy with some HTV scraps and make a cute shirt. So let's take a look at the supplies we're going to use for this one. For the HTV scraps project, I'm using a variety of scrap pieces. I often have these long scraps at the end of my HTV projects and like to save them just for projects like this one. I am also going to use a larger sheet of white on this as the background, my light grit mat, a shirt, and a paper cutter works really well for this project, and you will see why in a minute. So I'm going to use the same design that I used for the center of this tumbler on my shirt. So I'm just going to resize it in Cricut Design Space and cut it with my Cricut Explore Air 2. The background I'm going to make all white, and this middle portion we are going to make striped with strips of the scrap HTV. So let's see how to make those strips to cut this top layer. Once I size my design in Cricut Design Space, it comes to about 6 inches on the mat. So I'm going to cut, I have 4 colors, so I'm going to cut each of those into 1.5 inch strips. I like to use a paper trimmer for this because you do need the lines to be straight. I will just repeat for all of my other HTV colors. So for all these pieces, you want to put them shiny side or good side down on the mat and line them up to where they are straight. And then you'll just line them up in whatever color order makes sense to you. So this is definitely your project and you can do whatever you would like. This top one is my lightest pink, but it is white on the back. So if you're questioning why I'm using white, it is the lightest pink. And then I'll just mirror my cut in Cricut Design Space and cut it from this striped area. So now that I have all of my pieces on my mat, let's head to the Cricut machine and cut our design. I have my cut mirrored in Cricut Design Space, my fine point blade is installed, and now I can load my mat. I'm using the iron-on setting, and now I'm just going to press the C to cut. Then, once your cut is complete, just unload your mat. I'm going to go ahead and cut the white background, and then we'll talk about weeding and applying the HTV. So now let's weed these designs. So the first thing I like to do is use a craft knife and cut away any excess. After all, this is about using scraps, so I want to save all this that I can. So after I've ran over it with a craft knife, I can just pull all of these scrap pieces off and use those for another project. Now you need to weed the rest of the design. So I went ahead and weeded the white background here off camera, and then for these I'm just going to weed them right on the mat, pull back and remove everything around the outside as well as things like the centers of any letters. Then once everything is weeded, it's time to add this to our shirt. So let's take a look at the pressing process. To start with, I did add my Easy Press mat inside my shirt, and I'm going to press on top of that. So I like to preheat my shirt wherever the design will go. This just removes any wrinkles and any moisture. Only needs to be done for a few seconds. And then I am using a t-shirt ruler that is optional. You can definitely just eyeball your location and get it approximately correct on the shirt. You want it to be straight and in the right location. So this is the bottom layer and we will press it first. For time and temperature, I want you to follow all instructions for the HTV you are using. Now for this first press, for the first layer, I'm gonna do it just about half the time that's actually recommended for this HTV. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the ruler, then press this at the right temperature for about half the time. Once about half the time's up, I'm gonna remove that. Now this HTV is a cold peel. You do want to pay attention to what type of peel the manufacturer recommends. I'm going to let this cool off, then peel back the carrier sheet, and then we'll talk about how to add those striped layers. Now that this is cooled, we'll just peel back the carrier sheet. Once the carrier sheet's off your first layer, you can start adding all of your strips. So I lined up my first strip, and now each of the next strips should be fairly easy to line up, just using that first one as a guide. And we are going to press these all at once, so I'll put them all on the shirt. Then, once you're happy with the placement, it's time to press. This time we'll press at the right temperature for the full time. This one actually calls for pressing from the back, so I'll go ahead and do that as well. Now that I've pressed from the front and the back, I'll go ahead and allow it to cool before peeling back the carrier sheets. Then I'll just peel back each of the carrier sheets. And perhaps you've noticed some of my mistakes. So I just fixed the Q, so I'm going to fix the other ones. So I left a little piece of the S here when I was weeding. So let's put butcher paper, parchment paper, something like that over the top. And then I'm going to put my heat press here about 10 seconds. Remove the heat press, immediately grab my tweezers and just pull away the little piece that I left that I did not weed out of my design. So have no fear, you can fix your HTV mistakes as well. So now I think you'll be saving those scraps for some future projects. So you don't have to make exactly this tumbler or this shirt, but hopefully this gives you some ideas rolling around in your head about things that you can make with those scraps. So I love to save my scraps and use them for projects all the time. Hopefully you got some ideas, including that idea for the Cricut SnapMat that makes using scraps just a little bit easier. So now you're going to be wondering why you're throwing away all those little bitty pieces of scraps when you could be making something amazing like this tumbler or this shirt. So save those scraps, make something amazing. I know you're going to love it. If you have any questions about anything we've covered today, drop down in the comment section, ask away. If you liked this video, if it helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. So thank y'all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.